A fifth reason is that there is no agreement among believers themselves as to the nature or the moral principles of this God that they are asking us to believe in. You take any moral issue of the day, you name it, birth control, stem cell research, the death penalty, gay marriage, doctor-assisted suicide, you name these issues, you find devout, Bible-believing, church-going Christians and other religious people on opposite sides of those issues. There is no agreement among believers. I think we atheists are justified in folding our arms and asking you to get your act together first before you ask us to join this supposed fragmented cause of yours. Even Paul in the Bible wrote, God is not the author of confusion. But can you think of a single book that's caused more confusion than the Bible? It's all over the place. Catholics killing Protestants, Protestants killing Catholics, Jews killing Muslims, and so on. And yet all of them supposedly believe in this God. Finally, the sixth reason is there's no need for a belief in a God. Millions, tens of millions of good people, many of them in this room today, do not believe in a God, and yet we have meaning, purpose, love, joy, fulfillment in our lives that is just as amazing and wonderful as those of, maybe even more, because we are not contingent upon a future reward or a fear of hell to get it. So, with God or without God are we nothing? Tell that to those millions of good people who find that it is true, there is no purpose of life. Nor should we want there to be a purpose of life. If there is a purpose of life, that cheapens life. That makes us less. It's like the hymn that says, God, you are everything and I am nothing. If there is a God, we are subservient in the universe. We are secondary. We are children. We are slaves. If there is a God, we are truly nothing.
Okay, to answer your comments, and I now call on Cardinal Pell to respond.
Thank you, Dan. I think it's evident that we're talking at cross purposes. I spoke for 10 minutes talking about the intellectual patterns, the beautiful principles, fantastic equations, the miracles of life that are exist within the universe, and to say that they require to be understood an intelligence. They can't be just the product of brute chance. Dan says there's only one difference between us, and that is that he believes in one less God. Now, I prefer to put it in another way. I'm offering an explanation, and so far what Dan has done is just offered an affirmation, a disclaimer. Now, of course, I realise that atheists exist, and whatever I meant by without, or whatever the title means, without God we are nothing, is not true in that sense. My claim is that without God there is nothing. There is no explanation. I certainly didn't claim that you can't argue to God. What I said was that in the terms of physical science, you can't argue to God without doing metaphysics, without reasoning about that evidence. But the whole of my talk was to try to spell out the logic of believing in a superior intelligence. Whether that is loving or not, as we Christians believe, I think that's something that's a big help to have a revelation. There are no good arguments, there's only bad grammar. I don't think you can reduce the laws of nature to that. If Dan thinks that the laws of nature are just bad grammar, I suggest he step out the window and see whether the laws of gravity are functioning. human intelligence has detected and discovered so many of these fantastic exhibitions of intelligence and mathematical competence. Now, Dan seems to think that God is like the bloke next door. He says you can't be a married bachelor. That's true. Can't. God can't have his cake and eat it. We can't define God, because to define, you put person in a species. But we can say useful things about God. God is intelligent. God is spiritual. And what he said, there's no definition of the spirit. With the kids, I say, think of your parents' love for you. It's very real, very powerful, quite invisible. Honour, forgiveness, disgrace. They're all powerful spiritual realities. The spirit is real. It's just a little bit like the force of gravity. Real, powerful, and invisible. A little bit like the magnetic force that runs between the north and the south poles. God is a spirit. God is fantastically intelligent, and God loves us.
Thanks, Cardinal Pell, for his comments, and now invite Dan to respond.
Well, we've just seen two new debate tactics. One of them is to accuse your opponent of failing to rebut your arguments before your opponent gets to his rebuttal. The second is to misrepresent your opponent. I never said that the laws of nature are bad grammar. What Bertrand Russell and I say is that the arguments that theists have used to prop up their belief, those arguments are bad grammar. Imagine you're going to be killed by a firing squad. You're blindfolded and you're told that there's 100 expert riflemen who have never missed. They're going to be conducting the execution. You hear ready, aim, fire, and you hear the blasts, but nothing. You're still there. You think, why am I still here? It must be just blind chance. Would anyone say that? You'd be looking for an explanation properly, as George is doing. When you look at the fine-tuning of the universe, why are we here? Why are we not a stillborn dead universe? Does it look like the universe was expecting us, doesn't it? Maybe there was a conspiracy. Maybe the riflemen, maybe all the rifles jammed at once. Maybe they really liked me and they missed on purpose. You can think of all these reasons, but suppose you take off your blindfold and you discover that there were 101 prisoners that day being executed. None of them missed. They all killed somebody, but with the 101 prisoners, one of them, by chance, is going to survive. Cosmologists are now convinced, even Paul Davies, who was a skeptic, that some form of a multiverse is most likely, that our particular universe that we live in is just one of billions and perhaps maybe an infinite number of bubble universes within a huge champagne glass. They are now actually finding, I just read in Scientific American, ways that they are able to measure the probabilities of the existence of the different constants within a universe. It is not so amazing that we live in the universe that has the fine constants finely tuned the way they are, because we wouldn't be observing it if we weren't. I wouldn't be the surviving prisoner. It wouldn't have to be me. It could have been one of the other prisoners. In fact, now scientists are sure that, George is right, by the way, that if you do mess with one of the initial constants, let's say you have a stack of rocks that's just teetering right in the balance of falling, and you push this rock this way, the whole thing's going to come tumbling down, right? And George is right about that. The fine-tuning of the constants appears to be balanced just to support life. But scientists now know that there are other ways to make a universe. If I press up here on this rock this way, but I press down here on this rock this way, I can keep the thing in balance. There are many, many, many more ways for the formation of the heavy elements to have come into existence than just the one way in the one particular universe that we think of.